स्थापकाय च धर्मस्य सर्वधर्मस्वरूपिणे अवतारवरिष्ठाय रामकृष्णाय ते नमः. Namaskar to all of you. Welcome to the study of the great master Sri Ramakrishna. In the last session, we were discussing about the preface to the new chapter. So now we were studying about the Hindu religion and Sri Ramakrishna. So in that Hindu religion and Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda was telling about this particular topic, Hindu religion and Sri Ramakrishna. In the last class, we had come to know about the Indians, the Pranapakshi, or life force, is in Dharma, religion. So we had a small inkling about that. Now we shall continue from there. But in course of time, the descendants of the Aryans deviated from right conduct and lacking dispassion, devoted themselves to the prevailing popular customs and grew feeble in intellect. They failed to understand the import of even the Puranas, which appeared as contradictory to one another on account of their teaching those different divine aspects and preaching the subtle truths of the Vedanta in gross and concrete forms, in details for the consumption of the weak brains. Hence, they split into numerous divisions. The integral eternal religion, which is an aggregate of innumerable religious moods. The kindling and fire of sectarian hatred and jealousy. They endeavored to throw one another into the fire. When they thus turned Bharata, the land of religion, almost into a hell, Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna incarnated himself in order to show what is the real religion of the Aryans. So, Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, according to Swami Vivekananda, incarnated himself to show real religions of the Aryans was and where lay the unity amongst the numberless sects and denomination of the Hindu religion scattered pell-mell over a vast range of time and place. The religion that has become a source of delusion to the people of the land and an object of contempt to those of other countries, owing to its apparent division into innumerable ever-warring sects bristling with contradictory customs. This he did by holding aloft before the gaze of all his own life as living example of that religion eternal, by concentrating in himself its universality, lost by lapse of time. Now, Swami Vivekananda is explaining to us every avatara will have, incarnation will have a purpose. So what is the purpose of presently the sustainer, the preserver, Lord Vishnu, Gadadhara Vishnu? This time for incarnating as Sri Ramakrishna, the purpose is, all the time it will be to stop the decline of righteousness, dharma, the dharma glani, and lift the dharma. Now, how is he doing it? What was the decline? We all studied now, just now Swami Vivekananda told us. And now, how is he arresting the Dharmaglani? Again, Swami Vivekananda is pointing out that this time he came to remove this warring sectarian view to show what real Sanatana Dharma or Hindu Dharma is. Now, Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna incarnated himself in order to show what the real religion of the Aryans was and where lay the unity amongst the numerous sects and denominations of Hindu religion scattered pell-mell over a vast range of time and place. The religion that has become a source of delusion to the people of the land and an object of contempt to those of other countries owing to its apparent division into innumerable warring sects bristling with contradictory customs. This he did by holding aloft before the gaze of all his own life as a living example of that religion eternal, by concentrating in himself its universality lost by lapse of time. So he wanted to show, Sri Ramakrishna showed the universality of the Sanatana Dharma, that is Hindu Dharma. The divine, whose embodiment the Vedas is, gave no facilities of literary education to this incarnation. Vivekananda is telling the divine didn't give this incarnation literacy or literary education to this incarnation in order to show why was not literary education given to Sri Ramakrishna in this incarnation. So in order to show how the eternally existing Shastra, what is meant by Shastra? Scriptures, with the help of which Ishvara evolves, maintains and dissolves this universe, reveals itself in the heart of a rishi, where from all samskaras has been erased, so that when the truth of that scriptures, Shastras or Vedas is thus proved, religion would be rediscovered and re-promulgated. It is well known from such books as the Smritis. Smritis are a different group of literature. Now, Yajnavalkya Smriti, Manu Smriti, they are only like the constitution. It goes on changing because of the local time, changing different times, different societies, and so many other different reasons. Smriti goes on changing, but Shruti doesn't change. The Vedas doesn't change. They will be the same because they are based on universal truth. But Smritis are the one which guides the society according to the local needs and the local time. Because the society changes, Smritis also go on changing. You can see people catching hold of the Manusmriti, which was told for the people of 50,000-60,000 years back, and finding fault in it. Even the constitution, which was done by the forefathers of any nation, whether it is America, whether it is South Africa or India, they are constantly changing and evolving according to times. If that is the case, why should people take up some Smritis which was written some 50,000-60,000 years back? Or okay, according to the modern scholars, it is 5,000 years back, and finding fault in it because it was the Smritis are written for the need of the people of those 5,000 years back. If we start judging that, then there will be no greater unintelligent people than us. So Smritis goes on changing. It was written to that particular society, to the need of that particular group of people. So that is called Smritis. It goes on changing. It's just like the constitution of a nation. But Shruti, that is the Vedas or the scriptures, they don't change because they are based on eternal, universal truth. It's well known from such books as the Smritis that the divine incarnates himself again and again for the protection of the Vedas. Again, I'm telling Vedas means not a particular book. The literal meaning of Veda is Gnana Rashi, heap of knowledge or mountain of knowledge. So it is knowledge, eternal knowledge, knowledge of God. So for the protection of Vedas. So what is scriptures then? What is Vedas? It is the truth, eternal experience of the seers who have erased all their olden samskaras and made their mind so pure that the truth, the universal truth, will be revealed to them. So they are called mantra drashtaras, rishis, or sages, or seers. So they have given these truths, and that collection of truth is called Vedas. So it's nothing but the experience of the seers or sages, the pure-minded seers or sages. So the divine incarnates himself again and again for the protection of the Vedas. Even as a stream falling down a precipice gains in speed, and a wave rising after a fall swells higher, so after each downfall, as history demonstrates, did the Aryan society shed its morbidities and emerge more glorious and vigorous under the compassionate guidance of the divine. Rising again after each fall, our society reveals more of the eternal perfection hidden within, and the divine, the internal controller of all beings, likewise manifests more and more of his real nature in successive incarnations. Again and again did this land of Bharata faint away, and again did the divine Lord manifest himself and reawaken it. But in the past, no new moon night of sorrow veiled this holy land with such a dense darkness as at present. So this time, India and the Sanatana Dharma was going down to such an extent because of the invasion of the Middle East, the Islamic invasion and the Christian invasion by the British and so many other Portuguese, French. So India was enslaved for so many years. So that's why there was the downfall, the degeneration was too deep. But in the past, no new moon night. New moon night means Amavasya, complete darkness. No new moon night was as dark sorrow wheeled this holy land, Sanatana Dharma or Bharata. So the real name of our country is Bharata, and the people are called Bharatiyas, not Indians. India is the name given by the Persians because they didn't have the word Sa. So people who lived across the river Sindhu, they call it as Sa became Ha, then He. Hindu came from that word of the Persians. So that is how the original name. The original name of India is Bharata. So the Sanatana Dharma was never filled with so much of sorrow or degenerated to such an extent. In the past, no new moon night of sorrow veiled this holy land with such a dense darkness as at the present. That night is all but gone. Is being now at the fag end of its last quarter. However, the last fall of the country has been, as it were, to the bottom of the ocean. The downfall was the wave had gone down too much. The low tide was too much. The crest, the fall was too much. That night is all gone. Fall of the country has been, as it were, to the bottom of the ocean. Whereas by the compassion, all previous falls have been but into hoofs hoof mark of a cow. But by the compassion of the Lord who was incarnated this time, Sri Ramakrishna, the great incarnate, that's why Sri Ramakrishna called him Avatara Varishtha. And we also started with the prayer, Sthapakaya cha dharmasya. That's why Swami Vivekananda has written that particular verse. It came out of inspiration. Sthapakaya cha, who established the religion of the Vedas and the Aryans again, or the universal religion again, established it on a firm footing. When the downfall was too great, Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarva dharma swarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. So the great incarnation, Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, out of compassion, he made it that even this deeper fall, the worst degeneration of the dharma, righteousness, with his compassion made it look like a hoof mark of a cow. You know, the cow has the hoof in its legs. When it walks on the sand or on the ground or the mud ground, mud path, so if it is wet, it makes the mark. Even if it is dry, it makes the mark there, the hoof mark. So such a big ocean of degeneration of the righteousness, dharma, downfall of the country became so small, and it would be crossed quickly by the grace, by the advent of Sri Ramakrishna. That is the reason why Swami Vivekananda boldly proclaims, with the advent of this great avatara, Yuga Avatara Sri Ramakrishna, the Satya Yuga, the age of truth, the first, they tell Krita Yuga, Satya Yuga, then it was Dwapara Yuga, then Treta Yuga, then Dwapara Yuga, then this is Kali Yuga. So Kali Yuga's all the worst thing is gone. By the advent of Sri Ramakrishna, it has been neutralized, and Satya Yuga has started again. All the differences have been removed. All the barriers, the caste barriers has been removed. The differences have been removed. And he has established the Dharma to such an extent that all the higher rise of India and the Dharma, India was at its peak. So now the development of India and Hindu Dharma will rise so high because of the advent of Sri Ramakrishna that all the other earlier glories will pale into insignificance. These are the words of the great Acharya, Swami Vivekananda. Now, as I told you, Swami Vivekananda is telling, therefore, compared with the splendor of this present awakening of the Aryan society, of Bharata, which is now called India, previous awakenings will appear as lacking in luster. Like stars before the effulgence of this bright sun, and compared with the great vigor of this reawakening, similar occurrences of the past will appear as child's play. So the advent and the sadhana and the spiritual practice of Sri Ramakrishna, who is an illiterate according to the modern education standard, his advent has created so much of development in the country that this time the glory of the country called India or Bharata and the Hinduism will rise so high, the older glories will pale into insignificance. Therefore, compared to the splendor of this present awakening of the Aryan society, Indian society, previous awakenings will appear as lacking in luster, like stars before the effulgence of the bright sun. And compared with the great vigor of this reawakening, similar occurrences of the past will appear as child's play. On account of the lack of fit persons to prevent the calamity, the fragments of the various aspects of the eternal religion lay scattered in all directions during the present downfall in the form of petty sects India and Hinduism was divided into petty sects. It was partially preserved in some places and utterly lost in other places. The most compassionate divine Lord has manifested himself far more fully, far more fully. The manifestation of the avatara. So each time the downfall is too great, then he has to manifest more strength. So this time the manifestation of the energy and the strength is much, much far higher than the earlier one. So more fully in the modern age, in the aforesaid form of the incarnation of this age, than he ever did in any other age, playing as he has done on the entire gamut, playing, playing as he has done on the entire gamut of all the spiritual moods. No other avatars earlier had played on the gamut of all spiritual moods and experiences and utilizing to the utmost all arts and sciences. In consequence of this fact, during this Renaissance, so the real Renaissance has begun due to the advent of Sri Ramakrishna. So, in consequence of this fact, the advent of incarnation Sri Ramakrishna, during this Renaissance, the descendants of Manu, Manava, descendants of Manus are called Manava, invigorated by this new strength or humans will be able not only to piece together the fragmented and scattered mass of spiritual knowledge, but also to rediscover the lost branches of arts and science and to enrich their lives by the realization of those ideas and ideals through proper understanding. Hence, is being preached the harmony of all noble ideas and ideals at the dawn of this great age. And this infinite and eternal grand ideal that lay embedded and hidden in the ancient scriptures and religions of India is being loudly proclaimed in society. This new faith of age is a fruitful source of all blessings to the world, especially to India, Bharata. And Sri Bhagavan Ramakrishna, the founder of this new religion of the age, is the reformed manifestation of the ancient holy founders of the religions of the past. Have faith in it, Swami Vivekananda is telling, have faith in it, O man, and grasp it. O man, a dead person never returns. A past night does not come back. An emotion, however passionate, never takes the same form over again. A jiva, likewise, does not assume the same body twice. We therefore call you back from the worship of the past to that of the palpable present, from the useless expenditure of energy on the regrets for the bygone to the grand endeavor of the living present, from the waste of energy in recovering lost pathways to the broad new laid neighboring highways. Wise one, take the hint. Imagine and feel the fully developed state of the power, the mere opening sound of which is reverberating in all quarters to the very skies. Give up all vain doubts, Swami Vivekananda is telling. Weakness, jealousy, and malice common amongst a slave race and help in the work of turning forward the wheel of this great age. We are the servants of the Divine Lord, his children, his playmates, assisting him in his play. Have this faith firmly implanted in your heart and come up to the field of action. These are the words of Swami Vivekananda about the present incarnation, Sri Ramakrishna, and Hinduism. How he's connecting, what is the role of Sri Ramakrishna in regenerating the Sanatana Dharma, the Aryan race, the Bharata, which is now called India, the Hindu religion, and Sri Ramakrishna. So this was given by none other than the great world conqueror Swami Vivekananda. Now we shall come to the proper life of Sri Ramakrishna. Shardanandaji Maharaj is now giving us Sri Ramakrishna in Bhavamukha. We had earlier heard so many times about Bhavamukha. Now the chapter itself it start Sri Ramakrishna in Bhavamukha. So there is a statement of Bhagavad Gita, that is Bhagavad Gita 7th chapter 12th and 13th verse has been quoted here. The English meaning, simple meaning has been given by Shardanandaji Maharaj to connect it with the life of Sri Ramakrishna. What is that? What is the Gita statement? The mental state derived from sattva. So 7th chapter, if you want, you can go and refer it. 7th chapter, 12th and 13th verses. What is Lord Krishna telling in Bhagavad Gita in the 12th and 13th verse of the 7th chapter? The mental state derived from sattva, those from rajas and those from tamas. The mental states derived from sattva, those from rajas, those from tamas, verily proceed from me. Everything proceeds from me, the Lord. But I am not in them. They are in me. Deluded by these three states, the modification of the gunas, all this world is ignorant of me, who am beyond them and changeless. Many have now come to know that at the end of the extraordinary austerity practiced continually for 12 years, Sri Ramakrishna was bidden by the Mother of the Universe to remain in Bhavamukha. After the 12 years of sadhana, spiritual practices, of trying all that spiritual experience, now Divine Mother has bidden Sri Ramakrishna to remain in Bhavamukha, which command Ramakrishna obeyed. But it is very difficult to understand and explain what it is to remain in Bhavamukha and how deep its meaning is. 28 years ago, that is during the time of Shardanandaji Maharaj writing this book, is telling it as 28 years ago about Swami Vivekananda. But now it has crossed more than 100 years. So at that time, when Shardanandaji Maharaj is writing this book, he is mentioning 28 years ago, Swami Vivekananda once said to a friend. Who was that friend? Haramohana Mitra. Shelves of philosophical books, shelves of philosophical books can be written on each single sentence. Shelves of philosophical books can be written on each single sentence spoken by Sri Ramakrishna. This told by Swami Vivekananda and quoted by Shardanandaji Maharaj here. So he's telling 28 years back when he's writing this book. Haramohana Mitra was surprised to hear it from Swami Vivekananda and said, is that so? Just one ordinary statement of Ramakrishna, you can write shelves of philosophical books? Is that so? He was surprised to hear that. We, however, do not find so deep meaning in his words. We people, it looks, whatever Ramakrishna has told is very, very ordinary. Haramohana Mitra is expressing his doubt to Sri Ramakrishna. We, however, do not find so deep a meaning in the words of Sri Ramakrishna. You are telling that shelves of philosophical contents can be written on just one ordinary sentence of Sri Ramakrishna. We don't see it. Will you please explain to me any of his utterance in this manner? He has challenged Swami Vivekananda, to which Swami Vivekananda replied, you would have understood it had you the brains. Take any saying of Sri Ramakrishna and I shall prove my statement. Friend, now he's telling Swami Vivekananda, Haramohana Mitra is asking, okay, all right, please explain the story of the elephant god and the Mahut god. The elephant god and the Mahut god related by Ramakrishna to illustrate his instruction on seeing God in all beings? Can you illustrate? That is ordinary story illustrated by Ramakrishna. Can you write shelves of philosophical books on it? Now the Swami, the great Swami Vivekananda, at once took up the controversy over the doctrine of free will and of predestination or personal effort and God's will, raging perpetually among the scholars of both East and West without their approaching any conclusion, and continued for 3 days. Swami Vivekananda continued for 3 days to explain to the friend in simple language that the story of Sri Ramakrishna was a wonderful solution to that controversy. Imagine when his friend Harmohana Mitra challenged Swami Vivekananda, saying that, however, we do not find any deep meaning in the words of Sri Ramakrishna. Will you please explain to me any of the utterance in that manner? Swami Vivekananda challenged him. You would have understood it had you the brains. Take any saying of Sri Ramakrishna, I shall prove my statement. To which Ramamohana Mitra told, all right, please explain the story of elephant god and the Mahut god, related by Sri Ramakrishna to illustrate these instructions on seeing God in all beings. So I will just briefly tell the story. Sri Ramakrishna used to tell this story to his devotees. One of the Guru was explaining to all his disciples that God exists in all the living beings. God exists in all the living beings. You have to see God existing in all the living beings, and you have to do prostration, namaskar, and also serve that Lord in all the living beings. When that was explained by the Guru, one of the disciple who heard it wanted to practice it. So he was walking on the road, highway, freeway, what is called in South Africa, and elephant, which was mad, was rushing on the street. So now it was killing all the people who were nearby. It was throwing, kicking everything, destroying everything on the road, and rushing. So the controller of the elephant had lost control of the elephant. Mahut, he's called Mahut. So now he started shouting to everybody, please run away, please run away. My elephant has gone mad and wild. I can't control it. Please run away. It may harm you. Please run away. But this disciple of that Guru, who had heard that freshly the teaching of his Guru to see God in every living being, he thought, why should I run away? God exists in that elephant too. So he started doing pranama and singing praise of God and doing bhajans, and started dancing on the highway instead of running away or going away, escaping from the elephant. He started doing Sankirtan, praise of the Lord in the elephant. The Mahut, or the controller of the elephant, is shouting, go away, O Brahmachari, O disciple, go away, run away, the elephant will kick you, you may die. He didn't care. He took the words of his Guru so seriously and started singing the praise of the Lord in the form of the elephant and standing there on the freeway. So the elephant came quickly and caught hold of him by its trunk and threw him with such great force that he went and fell in the bushes and some other place outside the highway at the road. He was hurt very badly, bruised. So he lay there bleeding and unconscious. The elephant went away. Then some of the disciple and the people, onlookers, they took him, nursed him, he was unconscious. So they told all the other disciples and they came and took him to the ashram. They nursed him and he came back to consciousness. He became conscious of the world, external world. It's not consciousness. He was from that state of unconscious state, he came back to conscious state. Now, the Guru asked him, Why didn't you run away? Why were you just standing in front of the elephant? Then the disciple told, Oh Guruji, oh Master, you have told that God exists in all the living beings. So I started seeing God in that elephant. And so the God will not harm me. So I stood there. But the elephant came, caught hold of me, threw me, and I'm bruised, you see. Then the Guru put that teaching in the right perspective. He told, Yes, that's true. I've told you that God exists in all the living beings. If you saw God in that elephant, wild elephant, mad elephant, why didn't you see God in the Mahut? The man who was sitting on the elephant who was asking you again and again, shouting at you, please run away, please run away. Why didn't you heed the words of the Mahut elephant? You could have heeded his words, the Mahut elephant, and gone away from that place and saved yourself. You took my teaching only one side and saw God in the elephant and stood there. You could have obeyed the Mahut elephant, the man who was sitting on the elephant who couldn't control the elephant, and run away from that place. Why didn't you hear him? So that is the story of the Mahut elephant, which he asked. The friend Harahan Mohanamitra is telling, all right, please explain the story of the elephant god and the Mahut god, related by Sri Ramakrishna to illustrate his instruction on seeing God in all beings. So the practical way, we apply so many teachings from the scriptures in a wrong way and get into trouble. So what is the right way is being taught by this example. No, it looks for us onlookers as a very ordinary and simple example. But now Swami Vivekananda, when challenged by Haramohana Mitra, what is so great in this teaching? The Swami at once took up the controversy over the doctrine of free will and predestination, or personal effort and God's will, raging perpetually among all the scholars of both East and West. And for 3 days, so the scholars of East and West, without their approaching any conclusion, so they are finding these two things confusing. What is that? The controversy over the doctrine of free will and predestination, and personal effort and God's will. So now Swami Vivekananda took up that matter and connected it to show that this teaching of Sri Ramakrishna can explain all those things. And he continued for 3 days. Continuously 3 days, Swami Vivekananda explained this particular teaching of the elephant god and Mahut god. Swami Vivekananda went for 3 days to explain to the friend in simple language that the story of Sri Ramakrishna was a wonderful solution to that controversy. Could you imagine? Swami Vivekananda explained for 3 days continuously. On reflection, one is amazed to find such profundity of meaning in the ordinary daily conduct of Sri Ramakrishna and in his teachings. This is true of every one of the incarnations of God. One has to study their lives to be convinced of this truth. Leaving aside the instances of one or two great souls like Shankaracharya, who had to re-establish religion by tearing to shreds the whole fabric of opponents' perverse arguments, we find in the lives of other great souls that they said and explained the truths they had to teach in simple language and in short parables and in homely similes and allegories touching the hearts. They kept themselves at a safe distance from grandiloquent bombast. What a wonderful usage of English word. All the other incarnation and great souls, they kept themselves at a safe distance from grandiloquent bombast or elaborate rhetoric, but their simple words and plain similes have so much of meaning and power in them for elevating ordinary people to high ideals. So though they are very simple, They have so much of strength in it to elevate the mind of ordinary people. The simple words and plain similes of these incarnations have so much meaning and power in them for elevating ordinary people to high ideals that even now we have not been able to comprehend their meanings in full or find a limit to their power, though we have been attempting to do so for thousands of years. The more we study them, the more we find deeper and deeper meanings. And the more we muse over them, the more does the mind renounce the transient, inauspicious realm of the world and ascend to higher and higher regions. And the farther one proceeds towards the realization of the supreme goal, the existence in Brahman, liberation, that is perfect freedom, complete freedom, or the vision of God, as that state has been variously called by the great soul, the more does one comprehend in one's heart of hearts the deep significance of those simple words because of the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna or any other incarnation. Going forward, Shardanandaji Maharaj is telling, this is the law. We do not find any exception to the operation of this law in Sri Ramakrishna's words and conduct. Oh, what a profound depth of content do the Master's words reveal, and how little of it did they appear to possess at the first hearing. Even we, that is Shardanandaji Maharaj and other direct disciples are telling, we even couldn't understand that at the first hearing. It's enough to give here one example. Shardanandaji Maharaj is giving one example. After meeting Sri Ramakrishna a few times, one day Girish Chandra Ghosh, the famous dramatist, writer, poet, and so many other great qualities were there, is called as the father of Bengal drama. Even now in the theaters, every theater, drama theater, or any other theater, people do not start their work without bowing down to Sri Ramakrishna. Everywhere there will be a photo of Sri Ramakrishna. Why? That was the influence of the father of Bengali drama, that is Girish Chandra Ghosh. So, after meeting Sri Ramakrishna a few times, one day Girish Chandra Ghosh, the great dramatist, poet, offered himself completely to Sri Ramakrishna and said, what shall I do from now on? He asked Sri Ramakrishna after he was influenced by the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, such a great dramatist, such a great poet, a literary figure, who is called as a father of Bengali drama and literature. He asked Sri Ramakrishna, what shall I do from now on? To which Sri Ramakrishna replied, go on. Be doing what you have been doing until now. Now keep to both sides. That is, what are the both sides? This, that is God, and the other side, the world, God and world, yoga and bhoga. When one side, that is the world, drops off, whatever is ordained to happen will happen. So catch hold of God and also be in the world. Do not give up anything. Gradually, the world drops off. Whatever is ordained to happen will happen, but continue to remember and think of the Lord God every morning and evening. Saying this, he looked at Girish Chandra Ghosh as if waiting for a reply. He asked him, what shall I do now? How shall I change my life? To which Sri Ramakrishna told, do not give up anything. Catch hold of God and also this world, continue, and gradually the world will fall off. And what remains, you continue with that. That is the Lord. And he told, but continue to remember and think of the Lord, Him, every morning and evening. Think of God every morning and evening. Saying this, he looked at Girish Chandra Ghosh as if waiting for a reply. At this, Girish Chandra Ghosh was sad and thought, the nature of my work and the nature of my life is such that I cannot keep regular time even for satisfying my daily physical needs such as eating, drinking, sleeping, etc. There is no routine. I am certain to fail to remember God and to think of Him morning and evening. I can't do that. Even 2 times, morning and evening, to think of God. Oh, what a calamity would it be to transgress Guru's words. Now you are my Guru. If I transgress my Guru's words, that will be the greatest of the sins. Oh, what a calamity would it be to transgress Sri Guru's words. Evil will certainly befall for me. If you transgress the words of the Guru, evil, it will be a greatest calamity, and evil will certainly befall me for it. So, how can I agree? I can't agree to your words to remember God every morning and evening. It is certainly wrong to fail to keep one's promise to any person in this world, more so a promise to a person whom one is going to accept as one's spiritual guide, Guru. Girish Chandra Ghosh was hesitating even to express his thoughts. He continued to think, he continued to think that surely Sri Ramakrishna had not asked him to do a very difficult task. Had he said this to anyone else, that person would have at once agreed. But what could Girish Chandra Ghosh do? As he knew correctly the state of his mind, he knows what his mind is, which was full of outgoing tendencies. He found that it was as it were beyond his power to practice even that little of religious duties every day, just to think of God morning and evening. He knows his mind, his restless mind. So he knew that he couldn't do even that, though it was a very ordinary thing told by his Guru. It was beyond his power to practice even this little of religious duty every day. Again, looking at his own nature, he found that he felt suffocated even to think that he was to submit himself to an obligation binding him, or even to a vow or a rule. He felt that his mind would feel no peace till that vow or rule was broken. Such was his state of mind. If any rule was imposed on him, the mind would rebel to such an extent that it would not rest until it has broken the rule or that vow. This was true all through his life. He had led such a bohemian life all through. There was no difficulty in voluntarily doing anything good or bad. But his mind rebelled at the thought that he was bound to do such and such a thing. Realizing his very weak and helpless condition, he felt distress and kept silent. He could neither say he would do it, nor could he say he couldn't do it. How could he be? How could he be shameless as to say he could not do so easy a task? And even if he said so, what would Sri Ramakrishna and others present there think about him? They would not perhaps realize his extremely helpless condition and would think, even though they might not express it, this is what all this it was all a mere pretense of Girish Chandra Ghosh. They are bound to think like that. Finding that Girish Chandra Ghosh remained silent, the master looked at him and, knowing his thoughts, said, Ramakrishna could read his mind. He said, very well, if you cannot do that, remember the Lord once before taking food and once before going to bed. At least you have to take food once a day in the noontime, and you have to go to bed in the night. At least before taking food, remember the Lord once. And before going to bed, anyhow, you have to go to bed every day. Remember the Lord once. Just remember, nothing, no japa, thousands of japas and lakhs of japas or something like that. No. Just remember God once before food. Just remember God before going to sleep. That you do every day. Now, when Sri Ramakrishna told him this. Remember God once before taking food and once before going to bed. Girish Chandra Ghosh continued to be silent. He started thinking, I cannot even do that. He asked himself, Girish Chandra Ghosh, if he could do that. He took his food at 10 a.m. on some day and 5 p.m. on some other day. And there was the same irregularity about his night meals or sleep too. There were days on which, although he might be taking his meal, he was not at all conscious of the fact that he is taking the food. On account of the troubles and worries regarding the cases pending in the court, for example, for lack of information whether the fee sent by him to the barrister had reached him in time, and if not, how calamitous it would be if he did not appear in the court because of not being paid. If, however, such days repeated themselves, and this was not impossible, he would surely forget to remember and think of God on those occasions. Alas, the master was asking him to do such an easy thing, and yet he could not say that he would do it. Girish Chandra Ghosh was in a very sorry plight and remained motionless and speechless. But there raged, as it were, a storm of anxiety, fear, and despair in his heart. Sri Ramakrishna looked at Girish again and again, smilingly. Now, even though Girish was in such a bad state of mind, he couldn't agree even to such a simple suggestion by Sri Ramakrishna. That was the most simplest suggestion that anybody could get. So, seeing his helplessness, Sri Ramakrishna looked at Girish again and said smilingly, you seem to say I cannot do even that. Very well. Then finally Sri Ramakrishna told, give me the power of attorney. So now Ramakrishna went into a state of divine semi-consciousness, bhava samadhi. And he told Girish Chandra Ghosh, very well, then give me the power of attorney. Give me the power of attorney. This was to Girish liking. What is this power of attorney? His mind was now calm, and there swelled in his heart an infinite onrush of love for and reliance on Sri Ramakrishna and his infinite grace. Now, if there are children, small children, who have not reached their 18 years, they are minors. So they cannot hold property, they cannot look after the money affairs. So if they don't have any father and mother or anybody to look after them and to manage their property, money, accounts, and other things, so the court will appoint some other people who are responsible, giving them the power of attorney of that children. Until they become majors, cross their 18, they have to look after those people whom the power of attorney has been given. They will be looking after the child and the property and all the other money business. So that is called power of attorney. So now Sri Ramakrishna is telling Girish Chandra Ghosh, you can't do even such simple thing. Taking up the responsibility of thinking of God and doing spiritual practice, you can't even remember 2 times a day, even before taking food or going to sleep in the night. Okay, if that is the case, then give me the power of attorney. Give me your power of attorney to me, and I will take care of your spiritual life. I will do everything for you. Now, after this great assurance from Sri Ramakrishna, Ramakrishna told that in a state of divine semi-consciousness. What did he utter? The master looked at Girish again and said smilingly, you seem to say, I cannot do even that simple spiritual practice. Very well, then give me the power of your attorney. Very well, then give me the power of attorney. So what is that? Transfer your responsibility. When one person transfers the power of managing one's worldly affairs to another person, the latter transacts all business, grants receipts, carries on correspondence, and signs all documents on the principal's behalf. So that's called power of attorney. I explained to you in a simple way. Now Girish Chandra Ghosh felt very much relieved. This was to Girish liking. If Ramakrishna could take every responsibility of his, he's not going to do anything. No spiritual practices at all, zero. Just give the whole responsibility to Sri Ramakrishna and Ramakrishna will do everything for him. So this was to Girish's liking. His mind now was calm. And there swelled in his heart an infinite onrush of love for and reliance on Sri Ramakrishna and his infinite grace. He felt relieved that the bondage of rule, which was a terror to him, the bondage of rule, which was a terror to him, was now gone forever. It was now sufficient to have the firm faith, and whatever he might do, the Master would save him some way or other by his divine power. So the Lord, in the form of this incarnation, Sri Ramakrishna, has taken his responsibility. And whatever he would do, Ramakrishna would save him from every difficult situation in the life and protect him. So Girish Chandra Ghosh was relieved that the bondage of rule, no sadhana, now no thinking of God, no meditation, no spiritual practice, no karma yoga. So this bondage of rule was a terror to him, was now gone forever. It was now sufficient to have the firm faith that whatever he might do, Sri Ramakrishna would save him some way or other by his divine power. Giving the power of attorney to Sri Ramakrishna meant then to Girish Chandra Ghosh nothing more than this, that he would not have to give up anything. That he would not have to give up anything by means of personal effort or to bother about spiritual practices, and that Sri Ramakrishna would remove the last vestige of worldliness from his mind through his own powers. So everything, purification of the mind, daily disciplines, spiritual practices, everything Sri Ramakrishna will do. It is just like I will take food and digest everything by which you will be nourished, another person whom I have taken the responsibility. So I am going to even take the food, cook it, digest it, and the nourishment only will be given to the other person whose responsibility I have taken. To such an extent, Sri Ramakrishna has taken the responsibility of Girish Chandra Ghosh, everything. That is what is happening in our tradition. Now, when we get the mantra diksha, we are supposed to do the spiritual practices morning and evening as instructed by the Guru. But many people do not do it. Many people even have forgotten the mantra, they have forgotten their gurus. Many times when I ask, what is the name of your guru? They will find it difficult to even pronounce it. First of all, let alone pronouncing the name of the guru, they will have forgotten. So you have to show the photos, 5 or 6 photos of the Guru Parampara. Told who is the Guru. They will show, oh, this may be, oh, not this one. Oh, not this, maybe this one. So they will have forgotten the Guru also. Name of the Guru also. Oh, it may be revered Gautamanandaji. No, not revered Atmas. No, revered Smarananandaji. They cannot even pronounce the name of the Guru. And the mantra also, Bija mantra, everything they will have forgotten. So if that is the case, what is happening then? Once you have gone under the shade the protection of Sri Ramakrishna, the modern Yuga avatar, just like Girish Chandra Ghosh. This is an example of Girish Chandra Ghosh. Sri Ramakrishna has taken the power of attorney of all of ours. He will not let you go off his hand, protection. Once you have come to his fold, he will always guard you, protect you. He will do all the spiritual practices for you. Is there any proof to corroborate this? Holy Mother Sharda Devi used to tell that yes, if you do sadhana, if you do the spiritual practices, well and good, you can realize God in this life, you can get peace, attain peace. And if you do not do and continue with your worldly tendencies, earlier style of life, then too, okay, you may not attain liberation or freedom or peace of mind in this life, but at the time of death, Sri Ramakrishna will come, show the light, lead you by the hand, take you to the higher spheres and liberate you. So this is a promise given by Holy Mother Sharda Devi, and also Ramakrishna also has promised that. So nothing to worry. The power of attorney of all of you who have taken the Mantra Diksha has been taken over by none other than the Yugavatara Sri Ramakrishna. He will guard you, he will protect you. If you can do the practices told by your Guru, I will not tell, do not do. But if you cannot, due to some other things, reason, circumstances, do not worry. Try to do as to a maximum, put in the effort to take the name of the Lord as instructed by the Guru. But due to various other circumstances, maybe some disease or some other business, you may. If you cannot, then nothing to worry. The Lord is always protecting you. You can see how by the Girish Chandra Ghosh example, smilingly in a divine state of divine semi-consciousness, Sri Ramakrishna is telling. Master looked at Girish Chandra Ghosh again and smilingly said, you can't, you seem to say you cannot do even that simple spiritual practice. Very well. Then give me the power of your attorney. Give me the power of your attorney to me. I will take care of you. Everything. But Girish Chandra Ghosh did not realize that he had put voluntarily round his neck a noose of love. Voluntarily he has put round his neck a noose of love, 100 times stronger than the bondage of rule, which he thought was so unbearable. How was it? Could you understand what Shardanandaji Maharaj is trying to tell? But he did not, Girish Chandra Ghosh did not realize that he had put voluntarily round his neck a noose of love, 100 times stronger than the bondage of rule, which he thought was so unbearable. He failed to dive sufficiently deep into the significance of what he had undertaken. He had not then power to realize that it really meant that in any circumstance, favorable or adverse, leading to fame or infamy, to happiness or agonizing pain, he had nothing more to say or do. No complaints at all now. Could you grasp it? I'll take you through that again. Girish Chandra Ghosh failed to dive sufficiently deep into the significance of what he had undertaken. He had not then the power to realize that it really meant that in any circumstance, favorable or adverse, good or bad, leading to fame or infamy, whether he may get good name or bad name, to happiness or agonizing pain, he may get pain or pleasure, but he had nothing more to say or do than to bear them all without a murmur, because all the power of attorney has been given to Sri Ramakrishna. Whatever comes, you have to take it as the grace. No more complaining. All other thoughts vanished from his mind and he was feeling the endless grace of Sri Ramakrishna. In fact, a new ego rooted in Sri Ramakrishna was born and was fast developing in him. Now, many people ask me how to overcome ego. And also, some people ask me, devotees, how to turn our ego, which is very bad, towards God. As Sri Ramakrishna tells, do you have lust? Do you have greed? Do you have hatred? All those things, Arishad Varga, turn it towards God, it will be divinized. But how to turn our ego? And Sri Ramakrishna has mentioned there are two types of ego, Kacha Ami and Paka Ami. Kacha means unripened ego, Paka means ripened ego. So, what is that ripened ego? How to turn the ego towards the Lord, towards God? Now you can see here. All the giving the power of attorney to the Lord. All of the thoughts vanished from Girish Chandra Ghosh's mind, and he was feeling the endless grace of Sri Ramakrishna. In fact, a new ego. A new ego rooted in Sri Ramakrishna was born and was fast developing in him. In fact, a new ego rooted in Sri Ramakrishna was born and was fast developing in him. A spirit of divine defiance of the world came upon him. A spirit of divine defiance of the world came upon him, and he thought that whatever the world might speak of him, Girish Chandra Ghosh thought whatever the world might speak of him, even if it despised him, it was quite immaterial. But the master was undoubtedly his, and in all circumstances and at all times. You can see the same promise in Bhagavad Gita. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarvapapebhyo mokshayishyami. Lord Krishna tells, Sarvadharman parityajya, give up all the duties, good or bad or anything. Mamekam sharanam vraja, take complete recourse to me, surrender to me. Aham tva sarvapapebhyo mokshayishyami. I'm going to take away all the sins and everything away from you and liberate you. These are the words of Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. I have quoted it. So the same thing you can see here, Sri Ramakrishna. So a spirit of divine defiance of the world came upon him. Sarvadharman parityajya. Give up all the duties, good or bad, and just surrender to me. I will take care of you. And Girish Chandra Ghosh thought that whatever the world might speak of him, even if it despised him, it was quite immaterial. For Sri Ramakrishna was undoubtedly his in all circumstances and all times. How could he then know that the constant feeling of this new egoism? So, egoism turned towards God. How can it be made ripened ego? This way. So, what is that egoism Girish Chandra Ghosh has developed? How could he then know the constant feeling of this new egoism? What was that egoism? So, a new ego rooted in Sri Ramakrishna was born and was fast developing in Girish Chandra Ghosh. How could he then know that the constant feeling of this new egoism rooted in Sri Ramakrishna is regarded in devotional scriptures like Narada Bhakti Sutra as a kind of spiritual practice? How could he know that is also a spiritual practice? It is mentioned in Narada Bhakti Sutra in one of the scriptures. So this egoism rooted in the Lord is regarded in devotional scriptures like Narada Bhakti Sutra as a kind of spiritual practice. It is also a spiritual practice and a blessing that comes to human beings from an abundance of good fortune. Girish Chandra Ghosh, however, was now free from anxiety. No anxiety, no rules, no sadhana, complete dependence on Sri Ramakrishna. He has taken up the responsibility. So Girish Chandra Ghosh was completely bereft of any anxiety. He was free from anxiety. And while eating, drinking, or being engaged in any other activity, he had but one thought, that is Sri Ramakrishna. He was asked to think of God only morning and evening. Now, because of this power of attorney, he is constantly, every moment thinking of the Lord. How? And while eating, drinking, or being engaged in any other activity, Girish Chandra Ghosh had but one thought, that is Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna had taken upon himself all his responsibility. So a soothing thought, a balm to his mind, which through its deepening impression was gradually gaining mastery over his whole being and involuntarily making him meditate on the Master, thus bringing about a revolution in him. In all his thoughts and actions, he was happy. Though he did not understand all that, for he thought was it not a fact that he, Sri Ramakrishna, loved him and was more than his own? That thought was enough for him. The Master always taught that nobody's spiritual attitude of mind should be interfered with. You should not disturb anybody's spiritual mood. So note it. We do that. We think whatever is our spiritual thought and mood is the right thing, and we go on try to force other people also take that. It's very, very wrong. Please do not do that. Sri Ramakrishna was against that. If you are taking Sri Ramakrishna as the ideal or principle, should be very, very careful not to do that grave mistake. Do not force the mode of spirituality. Allow them to grow in a natural way. Sri Ramakrishna always taught that nobody's spiritual attitude, bhava of mind should be interfered with. And he used to act accordingly in his daily dealings with all the devotees. Knowing well Girish Chandra Ghosh's spiritual mood, he began now to give instructions thenceforth in accordance with that particular mood. Now he doesn't want to disturb the mood, the faith of Girish Chandra Ghosh. So all his teachings, all his behavior now with Girish Chandra Ghosh, Sri Ramakrishna now thenceforth started behaving in accordance with that mood of Girish Chandra Ghosh. One day, when Girish Chandra Ghosh said in the presence of Sri Ramakrishna, I am going to do that, I will do that, in respect of a trifling matter, Sri Ramakrishna remonstrated suddenly saying, Girish, look here, why do you say that I will do it? Suppose you cannot do it, what then? Now on, you should say, I shall do it if God so wills. Now onwards, you have to say, because you have given the power of attorney to God. If you tell, I will do it, suppose you cannot do it, what then? So you should say, I shall do it if God so wills. What a wonderful way. What a wonderful teaching of Sri Ramakrishna. I shall do it if God so wills. Girish Chandra Ghosh on his part felt. See the fun now. This is quite right. I completely placed on God all my responsibility, and he has accepted it now. I can do a thing only if he thinks it proper and good for me and allows me to do so. How can I do it by my own ego or power with a sense of doership? Realizing this, Girish Chandra Ghosh gradually gave up such words and idea as, I will do it. I will look after that. That idea gradually Girish Chandra Ghosh gave up. I will do it. I will go and so on. Realizing the import, Girish Chandra Ghosh gradually gave up such words and idea as not only in his words, but thought also. Kaya, Vacha, Manasa. At the level of thought, at the level of action, at the level of word, he gave up that idea. Thus days rolled on, and at last, Sri Ramakrishna also gave up his body in Samadhi. Girish Chandra Ghosh now after that met with various calamities in his life. Example, the death of his wife, the death of his son, and others. But his mind began to assert every time. What was that assertion? He, Sri Ramakrishna, is allowing these events to happen in my life only because they are good for me. You have transferred your responsibility to Sri Ramakrishna and he has accepted it, but he has given you no assurance regarding the path along which he will take you. Knowing what this path is easy for you, he is leading you along it in the right and easy path. You have no reason to say no or grumble against it. Whatever may be the situation in your life, whether good or bad, any calamity, is taking you through that. He knows what is good for you. So you cannot now tell no. You have to accept everything, whatever comes in your life. Were they then empty words? You have no reason to say no or grumble against it. Were they then empty words that you gave him the power of attorney or transferred your responsibility to him? Thus, as days passed, the hidden meaning of giving the power of attorney became more and more clear to Girish Chandra Ghosh. Was its meaning completely understood even at last? Asked about it, Girish Chandra Ghosh said, when somebody asked him about this power of attorney given to Sri Ramakrishna by Girish Chandra Ghosh, what did Girish Chandra Ghosh reply? Girish said, much remains to be understood even now. Did I know then that so much lay hidden in this simple giving of the attorney, power of attorney? Much remains to be understood even now. At the fag end of the life, Girish Chandra Ghosh is telling, much remains to be understood even now. Did I know then that so much lay hidden in this simple giving of power of attorney? I now found that at some time there is an end to the spiritual practice like performing japa, austerities, and other devotional practices. There is an end for that, like japa, austerities, and other devotional practices, karma yoga. But for me, because I have given the power of attorney to the Lord, there is no end to the work of person who has given the power of attorney. For he came to realize that he had to watch at every step and every breath, whether in all his thoughts and deeds, he was depending on the Lord and his power or on this wretched ego called I. So now he was asked only to remember God only in morning and evening or before food or going to bed. Now every second, every performance of his action, he cannot do it but remembering the Lord. Every second he has to think. So Girish Chandra Ghosh is telling at the fag end of his life, much remains to be understood even now about this power of attorney. Did I know that so much lay hidden in this simple giving of power of attorney? I now found that at some time there is an end to the spiritual practices like japa, austerities, and other devotional practices. But there is no end to the work of a person who is given the power of attorney. For he came to realize that he had to watch at every step and every breath, whether in all his thoughts and deeds he was depending upon the Lord and his power, or whether he is completely depending upon his own ego, the wretched I. Many thoughts occur in our mind in connection with this doctrine of acceptance of power of attorney. We find in the history of the world that it is the great souls alone, such as Lord Jesus, Sri Chaitanya, and others, who could sometimes give assurance of this kind to some people. Ordinary teachers have no power to do so. They can at the most teach others the mantras and particular practices with the help of which they themselves made spiritual progress. Or they can attract people toward purity by living pure lives themselves. But when paralyzed by various kinds of worldly bondages, man reaches the state of complete helplessness, and when asked to do Even a trifling thing, he pleads his inability to do it and asks for help in utter despair. It is beyond the power of ordinary teachers to help him. It is beyond the power of any man to say to another that he would take up on himself all the responsibility of the latter evil actions, Papa, and that he himself would experience the result on the latter's behalf. And no guru can tell that he will take up all the sins of his disciple and he will experience all the pain and diseases, everything which the disciple had to experience. But Sri Ramakrishna did it, and he is even doing now. Mother Sharda Devi did it. Swami Vivekananda did it. Swami Brahmananda did it. All the other Guru Parampara, they are doing it. Now Sri Ramakrishna is doing it even now. If you give him the responsibility, he is not only looking after you in your good times, but he is also taking up all your sins and all the pains, and he himself will suffer for that. That is power of attorney. So it is when there is a very great decline. It is when there is a great decline of spirituality in the heart of man, and the Lord, out of his grace, incarnates himself and suffers the results of man's evil action on his behalf and saves him from the constraint of that bondage. He knows how helpless the people are in this Kali Yuga, and the degeneration of the dharma, righteousness, has gone down so much that the Lord, the incarnation in this Yuga, the Yuga Avatar Sri Ramakrishna, he had not only to do the sadhana for the people, but he knew the helplessness, so he's taking up all the sins of all the people who has given him the responsibility and suffering for them. It is when there is a very great decline of spirituality in the heart of the man, and the Lord, out of his grace, incarnates himself and suffers the results of man's evil actions on his behalf and saves him from the constraint of that bondage. Although he does so, he does not absolve him altogether, but makes him put forth some little effort so that he may learn, stand on his own feet. Sri Ramakrishna used to say in this connection, man finishes the experience of 10 lives. Man finishes the experience of 10 lives in one by the grace of incarnations. These are the words of none other than Sri Ramakrishna is telling. Man finishes the experiences of 10 lives in one life by the grace of the incarnations. So that is the power of attorney, and that is the power manifested by Sri Ramakrishna, that the decline of dharma is so bad, people cannot perform the spiritual practices. They are so weak, they are so helpless. So this time the Avatara Purusha has not only to perform the spiritual practices and do all these sadhanas for the people, but also he has to suffer the evil actions, the papa, take it upon himself, because the people are so helpless, they cannot come out of it. So he has to go to such an extent. He has to manifest his power to such an extent. That is the reason why now you can understand why Swami Vivekananda could see it. We cannot understand that Swami Vivekananda and other great people could see the work of Sri Ramakrishna in this Kali Yuga, how he is lifting up the dharma, how he is arresting the decline of dharma, how he is taking up all the sins and suffering on himself, which even our parents cannot do, which I may feel difficult to undergo my own karmas, past karmas. But the Lord in this incarnation is taking up all the bad deeds, the karmas, the papa on himself, and is suffering for us. So now you can understand the greatness, the power manifested in this avatara. And that is the reason why Swami Vivekananda, that from his heart it came up in his deep meditations, Sthapakaya Dharmasya, Sarva Dharma Swarupine, Stapakaya cha Dharmasya was come to re-establish the righteousness again, Dharma. Sarva Dharma Swarupine, Avatara Varishtaya, Ramakrishnaya Te Namaha. So we will end our discussion today, and we'll continue that tomorrow, Monday morning, if the Lord wills. Until then, we'll be meditating on this aspect, power of attorney, giving the responsibility to the Lord. The Lord has taken up, and how He is doing everything for us, how He is protecting us, how we can completely rely on Him. Just give the responsibility on Him. Surrender to Him. He's taking us across this Bhavasagara, this ocean of transmigratory existence. So we'll meditate on that, enjoy that, understand that power of attorney. Now, we will give some time for question and answer session. If you have any questions, if you have any doubt, you can ask now. Any questions? Any doubts?
Pranam Maharaj.
Pranams Madhu.
Yeah, Maharaj, it was wonderful to hear about this power of attorney in the divine defense.
Yeah.
Only one doubt, Maharaj. So does
Yeah.
it not lead to idleness, because you think everything is, God will take care of everything? So will we not become idle, lazy?
See, just now I explained that too later on. How can he be idle? Every second he will be now thinking of the Lord. Oh, Lord will is protecting me. Whatever I do, even if I do now a sin, the Lord is protecting me. If you think that, how can you commit a sin? Even if you go to perform a bad action, the Lord will be there. Oh, nothing is going to happen to me. The Lord will protect me. Every second you will be thinking. It is even greater than the way the rules and regulations, and while doing japa, your mind may be running and here and there. But now, every action, every breath, you have to think of the Lord. It will purify you. It's even a higher sadhana, if you can understand the depth of that. Just now I explained Girish Chandra Ghosh himself telling that.
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah. So till the time we realize, yes, the depth of the significance or the depth of this aspect.
Even then, need not worry, because whether you are pushed to the water by somebody or you yourself get into the water, both instances you will get a bath, nice bath.
Yes,
Whether
Maharaj.
somebody
Thank you.
pushes you into the water or you yourself voluntarily get into the water, in both cases you will have a nice bath, isn't it?
Yes, Maharaj.
It's just like that. And Madhu, we have received the thing which you have sent.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Any other doubts?
Om Swamiji, Colin Chetty Swamiji.
Om Kolan Chetty, please tell.
Swamiji, the past hour and a half has been mesmerizing. With all of this, I think intellectuals have a problem because we have too much of very focused ideas. And when we listen to how Sri Ramakrishna molded his disciples, um, we are at a disadvantage. If we did not know so much things in the world, things would be much easier to follow the great master Swamiji.
Yeah, that's why they've come to make religion simple. Over the period, people and priests and priestcraft will make it more complicated and confuse us to make money or something, whatever, to keep the control. But the work of the Avatara is to make religion very, very simple. So religion is the simplest. So that is the reason why Avatara come and make it as simple as possible so that anybody, even the most ordinary person, unintelligent person, can understand religion and go forward in spiritual life.
Yes, Swamiji. Yes, Swamiji. Thank you so much for bringing all this to our benefit.
Thank you, Kolanji. Om. Any other questions? Any other doubts? Shall we conclude with the prayer? If you don't have any doubts or questions. Okay. Om Priyatam Pundarikakshaha Sarvayajneshwaro Harihi Tasmin Tushte Jagat Tushtam Prenite Prenitam Jagat Harihi Om Tatsat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.